The day before my engagement, my fiancé Chad's favored university student, Emma, came up to me and showed me intimate photos of them. Chad doesn't love you at all. He fought for me, argued with his parents for me, and even skipped a company meeting for me. I'm the one he loves. At that moment, I had just signed the final acquisition contract for Vance shares, officially becoming Vance's largest shareholder. I mused that I never wanted his love anyway. All I'd ever wanted from the beginning was Vance's money, wasn't it? The girl in front of me had delicate, pure features, wearing a simple yet expensive white dress, her long, straight black hair flowing down her back. After loudly proclaiming Chad's love for her, she immediately softened her voice, her eyes welling up with tears, and said pitifully, "Ms. Laney, please, Chad is all I have. Could you give him back to me?" Tomorrow was Chad and my engagement gala. As a strategic alliance through marriage between the current heads of Sterling and Vance, this engagement gala had garnered immense attention since its preliminary announcement months ago. Online opinions varied, both positive and negative. Some spoke of Sterling and Vance as a perfect match, destined to reach new heights, while others called them ruthless opportunists. But I didn't care what the opinions were, I'd already secured the buzz. After the news broke, Sterling's stock price had been steadily rising. Once the engagement date was set and announced to the public, Sterling's stock price even hit the daily limit. Thinking of my net worth increasing, I couldn't help but let out a triumphant laugh. The joy was so overwhelming that I even ignored the photo displayed on her phone on the table, Chad cuddling Emma, sleeping soundly, while Emma snuggled into his chest, smiling at the camera. The woman in front of me was Emma, Chad's latest mistress, incredibly pampered. If I hadn't hired people to keep a close eye on Chad's movements and had my PR team on stand, why, news of him spending lavishly on this woman would have been everywhere. Honestly, I didn't care who Chad's women were, it didn't affect me. But was a wild card, accustomed to acting with impunity. I couldn't allow any potential factor near him that might jeopardize the cooperation between our two companies. However, what I least expected was that Chad's little girlfriend was actually an idiot. A laugh escaped me from the bottom of my heart, a laugh of mockery. She bit her lip, then grew angry again, her eyes glistening with tears. Just because you have money, does that mean you can disregard Chad's wishes? Ms. Laney, marrying someone who doesn't love you won't bring happiness. Chad and I are truly in love, we already belong to each other. Can't you just leave us alone? No one wants to join you. You've got one thing wrong. Thinking that these matters were finally coming to an end, I was in a rare good mood and willing to waste time humoring her. The point has never been who Chad loves. The point is that tomorrow, Chad is getting engaged to me. Ms. Emma, if you're so confident in Chad's love for you, then why hasn't he proactively called off our engagement? The day after she and Chad met, the investigation report on her was already on my office desk. Ordinary background, both parents alive, an only child, attending Eastwood University in the city. She and Chad were alumni. She met him when he attended a school anniversary event. Chad, invited as a distinguished alumnus, was seated in the guest section when Emma, a student council member bringing tea, accidentally spilled it all over him. Everyone present was naturally shocked, and Emma, flustered, reached out to wipe the tea from Chad, only for Chad to grab her hand. At the time, everyone thought she was doomed. I still don't understand what incredible appeal someone who messes up at such a crucial moment possesses. Perhaps it was her face, she was indeed pretty. In any case, Chad not only didn't punish her, but fell for her, openly pursuing her without a care for public opinion. At his most extravagant, he even brought her to a cocktail party hosted by Sterling. At that time, a cross-border collaboration I had been working on for nearly half a year had finally succeeded. This was not only proof of my capabilities but also a crucial step for Sterling to expand its business empire. As the host of this celebration, I was undoubtedly the center of attention. Whether it was partners who had always maintained friendly relations with Sterling, or business elites who would prioritize working with Sterling in the future, all respectfully flattered me. Ms. Laney is truly remarkable, successfully landing several major projects since joining Sterling. Talented individuals emerge generation after generation. No wonder Mr. Sterling retired so early to enjoy his life. It's because Ms. Laney is surpassing her predecessor. I used to think Ms. Laney couldn't manage the big picture, but now it seems I was mistaken. Ms. Laney's capabilities are obvious to all. She will surely lead Sterling to restore its former glory. That's why they say those who've been in the business world for a long time are shrewd operators. When I first took over Sterling, few people took me seriously. Everyone at the time doubted me, thinking Sterling would fail under my leadership. But now that I've achieved results, they're all sucking up to me, praising me to the skies. I raised my wine glass, pretending to drink, concealing the cold smirk at the corner of my lips. It was then that Chad entered the ballroom with Emma. The cooperation between Sterling and Vance was already public knowledge, and Chad and my engagement had already been approved by both families. Yet, he not only arrived late but also turned around and brought his mistress to my celebration gala. This was a blatant slap in the face. Of course, there were whispers around, mostly about Chad's disdain for even pretending to care about the strategic alliance through marriage, or questioning what good my money-making abilities were if I couldn't even win Chad's affection. Chad and I had known each other since childhood. Our families weren't in the same industry, but we had some business collaborations, and our parents were well acquainted, meaning we knew each other inside and out. As a wealthy individual in the broadest sense, I knew money could never be fully accumulated, but who wouldn't want to earn more? If marriage could serve as a bargaining chip, then there was no reason for me to refuse, as it required minimal effort from me. Moreover, Chad was the best candidate I had carefully chosen after much deliberation. Firstly, Sterling and Vance had always collaborated, and an alliance through marriage could deepen this cooperation. Secondly, Vance's development in recent years had lagged behind Sterling, allowing me to ensure I had the upper hand in this partnership. And thirdly, for a company to truly last, it must not be vulnerable to supply chain issues. I had long coveted Vance industry but struggled to find a way to enter it. As industry's future daughter-in-law, this would help me open doors to new sectors. A strategic alliance through marriage relies on mutual benefit and powerful alliances. I saw Vance as a valuable asset, and Vance surely saw Sterling the same way. Therefore, this marriage progressed rapidly, regardless of whether Chad and I had any feelings for each other. From a long-term perspective, an arrangement benefiting both families often involves personal sacrifices. But with profits at stake, Chad, being a businessman, had also agreed to it at the time. To be honest, Chad didn't have the best reputation, with countless flings outside of our relationship. But I never saw him as a husband, so I naturally wouldn't hold him to a husband's standards. As long as he didn't affect the relationship between Sterling and Vance, even if he had a child, I could still handle it with a smile. However, he used to be less foolish. No matter how wild he was outside, he wouldn't bring it to my attention. Besides having the PR department suppress his scandals to keep them off trending topics, I would simply use these opportunities to leverage more advantages from Chad's parents. After all, without a formal engagement, I had no standing to control their precious son. If I had to clean up his messes, there would be a corresponding price. Chad might be slow-witted, but his parents were cunning old foxes who knew what was important. But now, his appearance at my celebration gala with his mistress was a blatant slap in my face. His already small brain must have been completely consumed by lust. I smiled, turned, and left, instructing my assistant not to give them any special attention, completely ignoring them. Being opportunistic isn't necessarily human nature, but it's definitely a businessman's skill. That night, Chad received unprecedented cold treatment. Even his usual buddies, who shared his questionable interests, were indifferent towards him. He didn't even consider whose party it was. His so-called buddies who were present had cooperation proposals with their family businesses hoping to develop with Sterling, still sitting on my office desk, awaiting approval. Could a delayed rebellious phase really have such a significant impact? As I chatted and laughed with older business veterans, I felt Chad's angry gaze, but I just subtly smiled and raised my glass to him. He was too foolish. Everyone knew who this evening's gala was truly for, everyone except Chad. He was self-important, believing himself to be the center of the world, failing to realize that Vance was no longer the company it once was. The strategic alliance through marriage with Sterling was sought by his parents, not something I chased after. The next day, Chad was escorted by his parents to my home to apologize. Play around all you want, but never bring it into the public eye. This was the unspoken rule of elite society strategic alliances through marriage. By disrespecting me, Chad had also put himself in a hot seat. How reckless he was last night would spread throughout the circles without any effort from me. Who would dare to partner with Vance in the future without considering whether Chad might suddenly act out and betray partners? Mr. Robert was truly furious. He not only forced Chad to kneel but also struck him fiercely with his cane. 1 strike, 2, 3, the cane whistled through the air. He was truly putting his strength into it. Chad's face turned pale, nearly collapsing to the floor. He gritted his teeth, enduring the pain, until he finally exploded when Mr. Robert told him to apologize to me. "Lainey, are you happy now? Let me tell you, I don't love you at all. Don't think having an engagement with me means you can control me. Forget about it. You're not even worth a single strand of Emma's hair. What kind of woman are you, besides someone who makes money? I'll never be interested in you." Mr. Robert was half dead with rage after hearing him, striking him again so hard the cane almost broke. Chad was on the verge of fainting from the beating but didn't utter a word of pain. He was indeed stubborn. He could probably talk his way out of an apocalypse. I was so heartbroken that he didn't love me. I shed 2 crocodile tears. Never mind, soon Vance would be worth less than a single strand of sterling hair. Uncle and aunt, since Chad truly loves that girl, I can't bring myself to break them apart. Our strategic alliance through marriage, it hasn't been officially announced anyway, so let's just call it off. Alfred, show our guests out. I was almost bursting with laughter, so I covered my mouth, pretending to sob, and ran upstairs. Chad, a grown man who had been running Vance for a few years, was still caught up in the whole "true love conquers all" cliché, even believing that my desire for a strategic alliance through marriage meant I liked him. He was truly an idiot. But it was thanks to his idiocy that I found a new path in the cooperation between Sterling and Vance. As and Emma's relationship warmed, I was certainly not idle. I approached several minor shareholders of Vance. Without exception, they were dissatisfied with Chad's arrogant and dismissive management style since he took office. I offered generous incentives and new opportunities, easily acquiring a significant number of Vance shares, and unwittingly secured a seat on Vance's board meeting. And that very night, Chad suddenly became a trending topic. A video of him assaulting 2 strangers for Emma was prominently displayed as the top trending topic. Chad was known for his flamboyant personality, completely oblivious to the concept of being low-key. Years ago, he was a famous internet personality, constantly spouting off without thinking, always showing off, and a regular on trending topics. Back then, the online environment wasn't as it is now. Everyone jokingly called him a spoiled scion of a prominent family, and hordes of fangirls would call him their husband. But after taking charge of Vance, Chad slowly became more subdued. I had thought he'd matured somewhat, but now I suspect Mr. Robert forced it upon him. After such a public humiliation at my home today, Chad was bound to argue with Mr. Robert and Mrs. Eleanor when he got home. His angry departure from home to find his mistress was also within expectations. When I saw the trending news, I was lying in bed. The video's location seemed to be a late-night diner, not necessarily low-class, but definitely a place Chad would never have gone before. In the center of the frame, Chad was fighting 2 burly middle-aged men, while Emma, in a white dress, was crying uncontrollably by the side. According to the whistleblower, Chad eventually won the fight, but he also sustained injuries and was sent to the hospital along with the others. All I wanted to do was laugh. After getting beaten that afternoon, he resorted to fighting to vent his anger that night. He truly had nerves of steel, perfect for standing tall against anything. The PR team called to ask how to handle it, and I told them that as long as it didn't affect Sterling, they could let the internet go wild. Just as I hung up the phone, a hand, fair as jade with long, slender fingers, reached out and took my phone. "Is it that interesting?" "Don't look at him," a man of unparalleled beauty leaned over. I affectionately reached out and stroked his face. "Just a mistress, who doesn't have one?" However, Vance's statement was released quickly after the incident became a trending topic. I used to think their company didn't have PR and legal departments. The gist of it was that Chad had righteously intervened to help a stranger, Emma, who was being made inappropriate comments and even touched by drunken men. Although his methods were ultimately excessive, he was courageous in saving someone. Online comments were polarized, some praised Chad, others found him excessive, and some even suspected Chad initiated the fight. With the matter escalating so much, the police also publicly released a statement detailing the investigation results. The truth of the incident was largely similar to Vance's statement, but Vance's internal affairs were in an uproar. Because had used excessive force, even if it was in self-defense, it couldn't mask the nature of assault and battery. Furthermore, the 2 injured parties refused to reconcile under any circumstances, and their families even protested at the entrance of Vance Tower, claiming Chad's severity was attempted murder. Vance spent a lot of money to take down the trending topics, but still couldn't extricate itself, and the stock price naturally suffered. Chad even faced possible jail time for assault after being discharged from the hospital. Numerous companies collaborating with Vance uniformly contacted me, and after receiving ambiguous answers from me, Chad's potential fiancé, everyone collectively postponed their cooperation and began observing Vance's situation. Many shareholders who were already dissatisfied with Chad publicly expressed doubts about his leadership and character, believing he couldn't lead Vance, forcing Mr. Robert to return to the company to regain control. But his health truly couldn't handle it. Unlike my father, who entrusted me with authority out of trust in my abilities and retired early, Chad's father had overindulged in his youth, and his health had always been poor, showing signs of a stroke early on. His physical condition had long been unable to support high-intensity work, forcing him to resign and recuperate. He must be even sicker these past 2 days, enraged by Chad, right? I heard that after Chad was hospitalized, only Mrs. Eleanor was busying herself, and Mr. Robert never visited once. Oh, right, Emma also tried to take care of Chad but was mercilessly chased away by Mrs. Eleanor. Of course, I had to visit Chad. After resting and relaxing for 2 days over the weekend, I finally went to the hospital to see Chad. In the sprawling VIP hospital room, there were only Chad and Mrs. Eleanor. Chad was lying in bed, constantly pressing Mrs. Eleanor about the whereabouts of his phone, while Mrs. Eleanor was silently shedding tears. Seeing me appear, both were very surprised. "Lainey, what are you doing here?" Mrs. Eleanor immediately wiped her tears and greeted me. I smiled and handed her the flowers I was carrying. "Aunt, what are you saying? Chad is hospitalized, of course I have to come see him. See how pathetic he is." Mrs. Eleanor was overjoyed. In her eyes, my willingness to visit Chad meant I had feelings for him, and therefore Sterling behind me would undoubtedly be a help to Chad. Because of this, she was even more enthusiastic towards me than usual, almost to the point of fawning. Chad angrily questioned why I was there, asking if I was there to mock him. What a silly question, what else would I be there for? Mrs. Eleanor suddenly turned and scolded him. "Shut up." Chad was stunned into silence. It seemed she wasn't completely oblivious to the current situation. I smiled, patted her hand, told her it was fine, and then said I wanted to speak with Chad alone for a few words. She didn't think twice, happily leaving us with privacy. Chad used to act with impunity, of course, because he was Vance's undisputed heir. But what if he wasn't the only heir? I completely ignored his anger, smiling as I walked closer to the bed and tucked in the corner of his blanket. "Chad, I have good news for you. My engagement is changing. You're free." Chad's eyes widened in disbelief, obviously unable to comprehend how his father, who had beaten him severely just 2 days ago over the engagement, would agree to change it. But perhaps being away from his ridiculous love, reason briefly occupied the high ground of his thoughts, and he quickly sensed something was amiss. I showed him a photo. In it, besides Mr. Robert, there was a young man who strongly resembled Mr. Robert, and of course, bore some resemblance to Chad himself. The two stood within Vance Tower, smiling and saying something. "This will soon be my new engagement partner." Chad clutched the photograph tightly, veins protruding on his hands. Congratulations, his slow-witted mind was finally working. Chad was discharged from the hospital soon after. After all, he was the son Mr. Robert had raised since childhood, and Mr. Robert hadn't completely given up on him. In the end, he smoothed things over for Chad, preventing him from becoming the first spoiled scion of a prominent family with a criminal record. However, to satisfy the two thugs Chad assaulted, a significant sum of money was indeed spent. Parental love is not endless. After giving, there must be a return for one to feel at ease continuing to invest. This money, usually a paltry allowance Chad wouldn't even notice, now, it was eroding Mr. Robert's trust in Chad. But after this incident, Chad had regained some sense. Reinstated at Vance, he finally learned treating subordinates with respect and being courteous. Dignity comes easy when you're well off. When a competitor appears, he realizes how important supporters are. Not only that, faced with his half-brother, who had no power base, Chad finally understood that his engagement with me had only advantages and no disadvantages. He no longer resisted the strategic alliance through marriage, even proactively contacting me, inviting me out to dinner, sending flowers to my office every week, and inviting me to events and galas on weekends. But he hadn't broken up with Emma. On the contrary, his guilt towards Emma gradually increased as he was playing along with me. Although I didn't respond much to him, nor did I ever go out with him alone, he still felt he was betraying Emma emotionally, and a stream of luxury gifts flowed to Emma's apartment. Oh, right, this sprawling penthouse in the city center, which is 500 square meters, was also one of Chad's gifts to Emma. One time, when I spent the night out, I saw him standing downstairs, kissing Emma goodbye. That's when I realized this idiot had bought his mistress an apartment in the same condo complex as mine. How awkward is that? I looked at my phone. He had sent me an invitation for a date the next day just minutes ago. I curled my lips into a smile. Utterly devoted, truly. I was impressed. What a total romantic. But I didn't expose him. Instead, I cooperated and confirmed the engagement date. Soon, the news of Chad and my impending engagement spread everywhere. Then, I began attending various public events with Chad, Vance new product launches, Vance anniversary celebrations, Mrs. Eleanor's birthday gala. Chad, determined to erase the foolish impression he had made earlier, was working tirelessly to make changes at Vance, with one event after another following closely. Almost every time, photos of Chad and he would be secretly taken and posted online. The related content was diverse, with some talking about childhood sweethearts forming a powerful alliance of two wealthy families, others analyzing the value of Chad's and my strategic alliance through marriage, some ardently shipping them, and others detailing Chad's past romantic history. Of course, I had myself to thank for this. To build momentum, I even spent a lot of money investing in viral marketing on various platforms, hiring a bunch of influencers to dig into the past between Sterling and Vance, and had people leak some vague rumors and elite family secrets, keeping the matter fluctuating in the public eye. I made sure that those who needed to see it would not miss it, no matter what. Chad's new half-brother was Nolan. Frankly, he was more handsome than Chad, with softer features, and his demeanor wasn't as arrogant as Chad's. He very courteously pulled out a chair for me and, after I sat down, gently asked about my food preferences. As he read the menu with his head lowered, the lighting cast a soft halo on his face. He didn't mention Chad or Vance, carefully choosing his words, every sentence tailored to my liking, both welcoming me and not putting himself too low. Handsome, gentle, cautious, and obedient, he truly was my ideal type. He had done his homework. I didn't dislike such intelligent people. In fact, he was far more likable than Chad. If the Vance family truly wanted to switch engagement partners, I wouldn't be against it. But was still too green. The more eager he was to make a name for himself in the Vance family, the more prone he would be to mistakes. "What are you two doing here?" A voice filled with anger rang out. I suddenly felt a powerful tug on my arm and looked over in surprise. It was Chad. Chad, whose date invitation I had declined, citing company overtime, was glaring at me furiously. His grip on my arm tightened, and the pain made me wince uncomfortably. "Chad, let go. You're hurting." "Lainey." Nolan keenly noticed the change in my expression and quickly stood up to dissuade Chad. "Shut up." Chad roared. "Is this your place to speak? Look at what you are. A low-class bastard." Chad let out a scoffing laugh. "Lainey? You call her so intimately. You're just as much of a suck-up as that mistress of a mother of yours." Nolan clenched his fists. I struggled against Chad's grasp, shaking off his hand, and impatiently told him to shut up. "Enough, Chad, what's wrong with you, throwing a fit in public? You may not care about your reputation, but I do." "I don't care about my reputation?" Chad laughed in exasperation. "And you hooking up with him means you do? Didn't you say you had company business?" "No, Chad, Lainey and I, Ms. Lainey, had just finished discussing a collaborative project. It was late, so I suggested treating Ms. Lainey to dinner." Nolan immediately spoke up to explain for me. He suppressed his emotions, his eyes already red. "What holdings project is it for you to discuss? Lainey is my fiancée. It's not your place to concern yourself with her." Chad was about to say more when a girl suddenly walked over, linked her arm through his, and said softly, "All right, Chad, Ms. Lainey is just having dinner with Nolan. Ms. Lainey is a busy woman, it's no big deal." This woman was, of course, Emma. I had just rejected Chad's invitation yesterday, and he immediately allocated his free time to Emma, taking her out for dinner. And he could still self-righteously accuse me of being entangled with Nolan. "Huh. Chad," I said, looking at him coldly, "you still haven't broken up with her." Chad's body stiffened, and he instinctively shook off Emma's hand. "Lainey, let me explain." Tears immediately welled up in Emma's eyes, and she looked at him pitifully, her hands anxiously clutching the corner of her dress. What a picture of heartbreaking vulnerability. "Explain what?" "Chad, Nolan, and I are sitting here eating dinner today, and I, Lainey, have a clear science." I picked up my bag, ignoring Chad's attempt to speak, and walked away expressionlessly. As I passed him, Chad suddenly grabbed my wrist. He opened his mouth but didn't speak immediately, his eyes fixed on me, as if silently pleading for something. I pulled his hand away and told him, word for word, "You wanted to know what Nolan and I were discussing, didn't you? You'll find out soon enough." The new quarterly cooperation between Sterling and Vance was about to be signed. I gave the project to Nolan and offered more favorable terms than Vance had expected. After that day, Chad called and texted me numerous times, but I ignored all of them and blocked him directly. He also came to Sterling Tower wanting to see me, but I happened to be away on a business trip, so Chad's waiting game was unsuccessful. Mrs. Eleanor also contacted me many times, but I brushed her off with work excuses. Meanwhile, within Vance, Chad's situation was naturally not good. Upon discovering that his son, who had grown up somewhat wild outside the family, was no less talented than his son who had received elite training since childhood, Mr. Robert was quite pleasantly surprised. He not only publicly praised Nolan at a board meeting but also personally took him to participate in various important events. Having lost the project with Sterling, the news that Chad and my engagement was about to be cancelled slowly intensified. Without his father's favor or Sterling's support, Chad failed to gain more shareholder backing during this period, his position became awkward, and his inner turmoil grew. Returning home, Mr. Robert, who had brazenly brought his illegitimate son home, felt it wasn't enough. He even decided to hold a grand recognition ceremony for Nolan, introducing him to society's elite, and intended to use that gala to replace the strategic alliance through marriage partner between Sterling and Vance. Mrs. Eleanor argued with Mr. Robert many times. At their most intense, they even go physical. The truth that her husband, who had been harmonious their whole life, had laid hands on her, was unbearable for Mrs. Eleanor, who cried daily. Unsuccessful in business, and facing chaos and fighting at home, Chad was in a bad mood. Normally, he would have gone to Emma, but this time he didn't. However, he still hadn't broken up with Emma, merely keeping her in the apartment, not seeing her or contacting her. Depressed, he sought out his buddy, Jason, for a drink. Jason had previously joined him in criticizing me behind my back, believing I was a doormat chasing after him, with no dignity, impossible to get rid of. Being drinking heavily, Jason asked curiously, "Did your fiancé really give the project to that illegitimate son? How could she not help you?" Chad chugged another glass of alcohol. "How could she help me? It's just a strategic alliance through marriage, she doesn't even like me. How could she not like you?" Jason was incredulous, looking at him as if he were a complete idiot. "She really likes you, Chad. You still don't know, do you? Sterling gave my family a project a few days ago, and that's all because of you. She said your friends are her friends, and we should get along well in the future. I also heard her say that you two met when you were kids. Once, she accidentally fell down the stairs, and you rushed to save her." As he spoke, he grinned mischievously and patted Chad's shoulder. "She's liked you for many years, you're a lucky man. That must have been a long time ago." Chad couldn't recall it for a moment, utterly bewildered. "Then why did she never approach me first? She's the eldest daughter of the Sterling family, the Sterling heiress. Do you expect her to treat you with the same care and consideration as Emma, to wait on you hand and foot? Are you crazy? Besides, you were so wild a few years ago, with one girlfriend after another. How could someone as proud as her proactively show you affection? But when the Sterling family decided on a strategic alliance through marriage, they didn't consider anyone else, they only considered you. It's clear she was after you." Jason refilled Chad's glass and advised him impatiently, "I'm telling you, that's enough. A woman like Ms. Laney, once she's gone for good. Look at Vance now." Chad was thoroughly drunk, his mind unable to process things. Only hearing those around him kept insisting that Laney liked him. He intently fumbled for his phone, but the alcohol was getting to him, he couldn't see any of the numbers on the dialing screen. As he slumped onto the bar, dizzy, he kept mumbling, "Laney." Seeing him utterly drunk, Jason pulled out his phone and called me. "Ms. Laney, Chad is drunk and keeps calling your name. He really made a mistake, he regrets it. Can you come see him?" I took Chad to my home. Yes, the same apartment in the same condo complex as Emma's. Actually, I didn't come here often, just an occasional weekend night. The fact that I still ran into Chad and Emma there was truly unlucky. After carried Chad to the guest room bed, he helped him with a quick wash-up. Only after confirming he was sound asleep did Jason come out. I was sitting on the sofa, looking at my phone. He faced me respectfully, a deep-seated respect, because he was a smart man, practical. I didn't care that he had spoken ill of me in the past. As long as he could be profitable to me, we could be friends. "Thank you for your trouble. You can go now." Receiving my permission, he immediately turned and left, not daring to ask what I intended to do with Chad. Such were Chad's buddies. I locked the master bedroom door and slept through the night. The next morning, the housekeeper arrived early to make breakfast. As I waited at the dining table, Chad emerged from the guest room, clutching his head from a hangover. He spotted me immediately, glancing around in surprise. After a night of restless sleep, his clothes were wrinkled, his hair slightly disheveled, and the dark circles under his eyes were more pronounced. His reactions were sluggish, he looked dull and foolish. "This is Lainey, yesterday was you, this is my home. Yesterday, Jason called me many times. You were causing a commotion, so I had no choice but to bring you here." I maintained a cold demeanor. This was proof that we hadn't reconciled since our last argument. "Now that you're awake, drink this hangover cure, and you can leave." I gestured to the glass on the table. Chad seemed unable to comprehend my words. He stood there dazed for a moment before reacting, rushing over to me and crouching by my side. He grabbed my hand and looked up at me. "Lainey, I'm sorry. What do you have to apologize for?" I feigned confusion, trying to pull my hand free from his grip. But he was holding on too tightly, so I gave up. "I'll handle the Emma situation properly. I'll make her leave and never see her again." Chad stared intently at me, unwilling to miss the slightest change in my expression. "I was wrong, Lainey, I really was wrong. I don't like Emma, it's you I like." His words infuriated me. I glared at him. "Chad, you like me? Did I force you to be with Emma?" No, he hastily explained. "Lainey, I've always liked you. I've liked you since a long time ago. You don't know how happy I was when I found out you were my strategic alliance through marriage partner." He even choked up. "But, besides work, you never spoke to me first. I thought you hated me. And gradually, everyone started talking about you, even comparing me to you. I was so upset, I felt unworthy of you, but I didn't want to give you up. That's why I got together with Emma. She and I were just putting on an act, it was all fake. I thought you'd get angry and jealous if you knew that you'd care about me more." Chad must have thought his pouring out his heart was genuine, so when I asked him to break up with Emma and accelerate our engagement, the delight in his eyes was almost impossible to hide. In his eyes, I must be very easy to fool, right? How foolish. When I went downstairs and discovered we were in the same condo complex as Emma, his face instantly paled, but he quickly composed himself and tentatively asked about my frequency of staying there. I said nothing, only smiled at him, and then left first. Fear stemmed from the unknown, and Chad, unsure if I had seen Emma here, had to make a swift decision. He had indeed broken up with Emma. After I left, he immediately called Emma to break up with her. Besides severance, he also transferred ownership of an apartment far from here to her and told her to move out of here immediately. After that, he was quite well behaved. He didn't go out drinking again, nor did he find any new women. He even proactively took over the preparations for the engagement ceremony. Not only that, he refrained from asking about sterling projects, simply chatting with me and asking me out every day. I would give him some small concessions, not outright refusing everything, but I always kept my distance, never allowing him to get too close. He just smiled, saying he would prove his devotion to me. Emma couldn't find him, no matter where she looked. Her WeChat was blocked, her phone number was blocked, she was stopped by the front desk at Vance Tower, by security at the Vance family home, and when she tried to find Chad's buddies at bars, they just mocked her, telling her to know her place. She seemed to be at her wit's end in the city, and in the end, the only person she could find was me. I truly thought I was too kind. I set the acquisition contract aside. Though it hadn't been notarized yet, I knew I was undoubtedly Vance's largest shareholder. Seeing that Emma still hadn't left, I kindly reminded her, "What is it, Ms. Emma? Do you want me to help you contact Chad to pick you up?" "Ms. Emma, you know yourself that if Chad truly cared about you, he wouldn't have broken up with you, right? He probably doesn't want to see you." Emma trembled, the tear in her eye sliding down her cheek, her face as pale as snow. She took a few deep breaths, then finally offered a desolate smile. "Ms. Lainey, I'm pregnant. It's Chad's." My face hardened at her words. "How much does Chad really care about you? How long can you bind him with profit? If knew I was pregnant, would the engagement gala still proceed tomorrow?" As she spoke, a shrewd glint flashed in her eyes. "Ms. Lainey, Chad loves me, I know it. I'm the one he loves." I was already impatient with this idiot. "I advise you not to say anything." Seeing my expression, she smiled knowingly. "It seems you're not so sure either. We'll see." She turned and left, defiant and confident, like a victorious Valkyrie. I instructed my bodyguards to follow Emma, to keep a close eye on her, and to report any hint of trouble immediately. But she simply returned to her residence and didn't go anywhere else. From her behavior just now, she wasn't someone who would give up so easily. As the time for the official start of the engagement gala drew nearer, I was in the backstage lounge waiting for my makeup when a bodyguard messaged me, saying Emma was approaching the engagement venue. The engagement gala for me and Chad was the most important event for both families right now. The gala was held at a 5-star hotel, and Vance had booked the entire place. To prevent unauthorized media from entering, everyone entering the hotel was required to show an invitation, and staff would verify their names against the guest list. Of course, I hadn't prepared an invitation for Emma. For her to come so boldly, had Chad specially arranged one for her? If the two of them pulled some stunt like eloping on the spot at the engagement gala, making me the laughingstock of the city. I notified the hotel to let Emma in, then told my bodyguards to swiftly apprehend her once she was inside, lock her in a guest room, and absolutely prevent her from coming out. Find a few more PE. Opal to keep an eye on Chad. If he tries to run, tie him up too. Chad wasn't planning to run, but walking out of the backstage lounge, he was still surprised to see the increased security. However, the engagement ceremony was about to begin, and the MC was already inviting guests to be seated. The men's and women's backstage lounges were at opposite ends of 2 corridors, with a walkway leading to the stage in the center. As the host spoke, Chad and I were supposed to walk towards each other, but suddenly someone rushed in, pushing open the ballroom doors, disregarding the atmosphere. He scanned the room, found Chad, and immediately ran to him, whispering something in his ear. That person was Chad's assistant. He handed Chad a piece of paper, Emma's pregnancy test results. Chad's expression instantly shifted. His smiling face morphed into disbelief, his brows furrowed tightly. As his gaze swept over me, I saw the malice contained within it. He strode quickly towards me, his fists clenched, his voice strained as if at its breaking point, and demanded, "Emma is missing. Was it you? Are you insane, Chad? Do you know what time it is?" I was both shocked and enraged. "Enough," he finally roared impatiently. "I asked if you hid Emma." So, he couldn't keep up the act anymore, could he? I no longer concealed it, curving a smile at him. It was me. Chad took a deep breath, clearly trying to calm himself down, but he evidently failed. His words came out like a command, "Let her go immediately, and I'll pretend nothing happened. We'll continue with the engagement." Why should I let her go? Don't you know Emma is pregnant? I know, of course I know. Why else would I have her locked up? It's all because of that bastard child in her belly, I said coldly. She's carrying my child, not a bastard child. The word pricked his sensitive nerves, and he instinctively raised his hand to slap my face, only to have it immediately grabbed by the bodyguard standing alertly nearby. He was furious, his eyes bloodshot, breathing heavily with rage, his gaze wishing he could kill me. "Stop this, Chad," I reached out to straighten his lapels, advising him in a gentle tone, "Just be obedient. Let this engagement gala end smoothly without incident. It's better for both of us. If you're not compliant, I'll have no choice but to have my bodyguards escort you onto the stage." He still hadn't figured out my intentions, actually asking me in return, "Is what you're doing fun?" "Yes, it is." I smiled. "Was your act before fun?" But I didn't care about his answer. The host had invited us onto the stage twice, and the murmur among the guests was growing louder. Nothing was more important now than this engagement gala, which was at a critical juncture. "Smile happily, don't embarrass me." I patted Chad's face and linked my arm through his. As we walked onto the pathway, 2 rows of bodyguards positioned themselves around the stage, completely blocking Chad's escape routes. Yet, not a single person in attendance commented on these heavily armed, stern-faced bodyguards, as if they didn't exist. When planning the ceremony, I had deliberately cut short our time on stage, so our public appearance was quickly over. Just as I was about to head to the backstage lounge, Chad immediately grabbed my wrist, his grip so strong it almost crushed my bones. He gritted his teeth and asked, "Where's Emma?" I thought for a moment, then tilted my head and asked the assistant waiting backstage. "Ms. Emma has already left safely." Yes, after the engagement gala had proceeded normally, I had them release Emma. Hearing this, Chad flung my arm away. He gave me a veiled glance, his voice deep with warning. "If anything happens to her, I won't let you off the hook." With that, he rushed out without looking back. Truly utterly devoted, I'd sked with feigned emotion. "Is everything ready?" "Please rest assured, Ms. Laney, everything is ready." Originally, this engagement gala was not even necessary in my plan. I already held 16% of Vance shares, making me its 3rd largest shareholder. Ahead of me were only Mr. Robert and Mr. Arthur. Mr. Arthur, a veteran figure from Vance's early days, held 18% of the shares. He was my top priority target from the very beginning, but perhaps people have an unparalleled love for things they helped create, especially when viewed through the rosy lens of youth. No matter how many times I visited him, he steadfastly refused my acquisition offers and candidly told me I had ruthless ambition for Vance. He wasn't wrong, I certainly did. However, over this period, he finally saw one thing clearly: Chad was an unreliable idiot, and relying on Chad was useless. He would only destroy Vance. Ultimately, he agreed to transfer half of his shares to me, but only after my engagement ceremony with Chad. I knew what he was thinking. The strategic alliance through marriage between Sterling and Vance was bound to be a grand affair, and after the engagement gala, news of the union would spread everywhere, binding the two families tightly in all aspects. At that point, no matter what I did, I wouldn't be able to shake the label of Vance's future daughter-in-law, and any changes in Vance would also affect Sterling's stock price. He thought this would make me deliberate carefully and not act rashly. But in reality, if I didn't want to get personally involved, I could have simply taken more time, gradually eroding Vance from Chad's hands. Since I chose to play along with everyone, this minor loss of reputation was completely insignificant to me. And the stock price? Sterling was under my control, and Vance. Who would have thought that destroy and rebuild was the fate I chose for it? With the contract notarized, the shares transferred, and the 16% I already held, I instantly surpassed Mr. Roberts' 22%, becoming Vance's largest controlling shareholder. As for Chad, these past 2 days he had been busy looking for Emma everywhere. Hotel serve. Island showed Emma was escorted out by security shortly after the engagement gala began, but her whereabouts after that remained untraceable. Yes, of course he couldn't find her. I had my private investigator help him out by feeding him some information about Emma's whereabouts. The data indicated Emma was in a small, remote town. Chad didn't even verify it, he just believed it, frantically driving onto the highway to go find her. But halfway there, Chad received a call from Emma. He had unblocked Emma on the day of the engagement, but when he tried to call back, he was the one blocked this time. Seeing his beloved's call, Chad was ecstatic. Disregarding that he was driving on the highway, he immediately answered. Before he could speak, Emma's tearful voice came through the phone. "Chad, don't look for me anymore." "Emma, listen to me." Emma interrupted his explanation. "I'm leaving, Chad. We'll never see each other again. I love you, Chad, but just consider that I loved the wrong person." "No. Emma. I love you. I truly love you. Don't leave me. Where are you going?" A huge panic surged in Chad's heart. He desperately pleaded with Emma not to leave, crying out his apologies, repeatedly asking for her whereabouts. In the background of the call, a flight boarding announcement from an airport could be heard. Emma gently exhaled. "This time, it's really completely over for us." She hung up the phone. Chad's heart instantly felt a huge void. He trembled and slammed on the brakes. Fortunately, the car behind him swerved in time, preventing an accident. A chorus of honking horns failed to restore Chad's sanity. Instead, it deepened his obsession. He actually made a U-turn right there, driving against traffic on the highway. Luckily, he had only been on the highway for a short time, and traffic was light, so no major accident occurred. However, when his car reached the toll booth, the staff were shocked to see him driving the wrong way and told him to pull over. He ignored them, swerving around, flooring the accelerator, crashing through the road barrier, and speeding out through the entrance. He rushed towards the airport, running every red light along the way, completely disrupting traffic. I was just finishing a Sterling board meeting when I received the news. Several directors had heard it before me. Reports stated that the police had arrested Chad at the airport. The CEO of Vance, looking utterly disheveled, was pinned to the ground. Related reports exploded online. 7 of the top 10 trending topics were about Chad, and Vance's stock price completely crashed. As soon as the news hit the trending topics, the stock market hit the daily limit. Everyone said Vance was finished. I was too busy to constantly monitor Chad, but fortunately, my PR team was not to be trifled with. I suspected that half of the police calls reporting Chad's actions came from them. After the meeting, I immediately attended the press conference that the PR department had already arranged. I publicly announced the termination of my engagement with Chad and the breakdown of the cooperation between Sterling and Vance. I further explained that Chad had concealed his actions before the engagement, expressed my distrust in his character and abilities, and conveyed my pessimistic outlook for Vance's future. My fiancé, Lainey's fiancé, could be a good-for-nothing. or even a powerless figurehead, but absolutely not a disgraced criminal. There was much online discussion, but I was the victim, so there was little negative talk about me. The most prominent discussions, of course, were criticisms of Chad. Sterling's stock price was slightly affected, but our swift disassociation meant everything was within my expectations. Chad couldn't speak for himself, because he was locked up in jail. Violating traffic rules and disrupting public order would likely mean more than just 10 days to 2 weeks. Moreover, the moment news of his arrest and Vance's stock price collapse broke. Mr. Robert, unable to withstand such a massive shock, collapsed and was hospitalized. I heard he suffered a complete stroke this time, confined to bed and unable to speak. Mrs. Eleanor had to care for Mr. Robert, face accountability from Vance executives, and try to get Chad out of the detention center. Under immense pressure, she also became weak and was hospitalized. As for Nolan, he was nowhere to be found. When he was brought back, Mr. Robert hadn't even thought to formally register his residency, so now, technically, his connection to the Vance family was merely a shared surname. At this point, everyone at Vance thought of me. This was natural. Everyone now understood that Vance was doomed, and only I could save it. They could only believe that I, who had spent a fortune acquiring Vance shares, wouldn't let this towering corporation collapse. Request after request for meetings was submitted to the Sterling CEO's office. It wasn't until Mr. Arthur himself came to Sterling Tower to find me that I was finally done playing my hand. Dealing with these old guard types? I had plenty of experience. They should think about how I solidified my position at Sterling. Was it just by relying on my dad, who went fishing every night? Vance was no longer the influential Vance it once was. For a company whose development was already in decline, all the executives clearly knew that only I and Sterling behind me could lead them to restore its former glory. As for Chad? What spoiled scion of a prominent family, what son of the founder, what glory of inheriting the industry? These gimmicks only worked when they didn't affect shareholders' vital interests. Once they hurt shareholders' interests, he was nothing. What I wanted this time was no longer just Vance shares, but to acquire Vance entirely. As industry's largest shareholder, I demanded a board meeting and the removal of Chad from his position. Everything progressed smoothly. Those who were compliant stayed on, while hardliners were crushed and expelled. Vance became my private dominion. By the time I had completely resolved Vance's internal issues, Mrs. Eleanor had finally exhausted all means to get Chad out of the detention center. Chad appeared before me like a man utterly defeated. He looked incredibly disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his hair in a buzz cut, his face sallow, his eyes shadowed with dark circles, and his beard unshaven. He looked like a homeless man, with no trace of his former swagger as a spoiled scion of a prominent family. He looked at me, his eyes suddenly reddening. Disregarding the stares of those around him, he rushed up to me, but before he could get close, he was stopped by my bodyguards. I smiled. I was in too good a mood. I truly couldn't shed crocodile tears to humor him. "It's you," he shrieked, pointing at me. "You caused all of this. All you ever wanted was Vance. You set me up." His eyes blazed with fury, like a demon. He woke up too late. It was me. I took a step closer to him, looking pitifully at this fallen, destitute man stripped of all dignity. Of course, I set the trap. I sent her to him. Not just Emma, but the 2 thugs he assaulted, his illegitimate son, Nolan, his buddies who gave him advice, his assistant. He had a brain, so why didn't he use it more? How could everything so coincidentally explode within such a short period? And the ultimate beneficiary, coincidentally, was just me. That's because I orchestrated it all. Emma was a clever woman driven by money. I showed her a path, in exchange for finding the best medical resources for her gravely ill mother and sending her abroad after everything was done. I helped hide her whereabouts. The pregnancy report was bought online. When was desperately searching for her, she was staying in one of my properties. And the airport, she was indeed at an airport that day, but not in our city. The sound playing on her phone was just a recording. Wind drove against traffic and ran red lights to the airport to find her. She had already gone through the VIP channel and was on a Sterling private jet with her mother, heading abroad. To damage Chad's reputation, I specifically hired 2 thugs to pretend to harass Emma. The act was well performed, and Chad genuinely believed it. I then instructed them not to settle, to insist Chad was the aggressor and used excessive force, and to have their families cause a scene at Vance Tower. Nolan, however, was different. Nolan's motivation from the beginning was not money, but revenge against Mr. Robert. His mother, when young, was lured by Mr. Robert's sweet words into a relationship. She only found out she was a mistress intervening in someone else's family after becoming pregnant. But by then, it was too late for an abortion. She could only give birth to Nolan with tears in her eyes. The whispers and social stigma from neighbors didn't spare this poor woman, eventually driving her to jump to her death. Mr. Robert did provide monthly child support for this son, but the money was embezzled by Nolan's uncle, who had adopted him. They would freely beat, scold, and humiliate Nolan. He often went hungry and poorly clothed, eventually being sent to work in a factory after middle school, growing up in immense suffering. Until I found him. As for Jason, the Jiang family had initially risen through Vance. They had tried to transition over the years but kept failing, forced to continue revolving around Vance. He had been Chad's lackey since childhood, but no one likes always being someone's dog, especially when the master is an incompetent lunatic. The generous incentives I could offer were more valuable. Jason recognized the situation and, without me even needing to ask, immediately switched sides to me. And his assistant, well, following Chad offered no future, so it was only natural for him to want to switch jobs, wasn't it? The proof of loyalty I required wasn't illegal, just asking him to fuel the fire a little. I never had eyes for you from the beginning. Weren't we just playing roles for each other? I never believed he liked me. I didn't trust a single word he said. He was just unwilling to give up Vance and didn't want Nolan to benefit. Both and I were merely props in Chad's performance. I whispered to him, "It's just that you're so foolish. You stepped into every trap, personally handing me the knife." I had no respect for the Chad of the past, and the Chad of today was even more a man utterly defeated. From now on, he would never have a chance to recover, and Vance's pursuit of accountability against him wouldn't stop here. My gaze was never focused on him, nor would I ever pause for him. Opportunity never waits for fools. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.